A very good morning. I would like to kindly thank each one of you for joining us live from MAHSA University, Saujanaputra. I'm Samuel David from the Faculty of Health Sciences, MAHSA University, and I'll be moderating today's session for you. Today's webinar is hosted by the Faculty of Health Sciences, MAHSA University. The title of today's webinar is COVID-19 Pandemic and Beyond, a journey towards mental resilience. Dear viewers, before we proceed further, I would like to give you a brief overview of the programs offered by the Faculty of Health Sciences at MAHSA University. Kindly hold on, we got a technical issue. We apologize for the technical issue we had. So the Faculty of Health Sciences, they offer the following courses. We offer physiotherapy, medical imaging, environmental health, occupational safety, and health. So the Faculty of Health Sciences, it comprises of the School of Physiotherapy, Department of Environmental Health, Department of Medical Imaging. So the School of Physiotherapy offers the following courses: Diploma in Physiotherapy, Bachelor of Physiotherapy Honors, Bachelor of Physiotherapy Honors on an ODL platform, and Master of Physiotherapy. The Department of Environmental Health offers the following courses: Diploma in Environmental Health, Bachelor of Environmental Health and Safety Honors, Bachelor of Environmental Health and Safety Honors, Diploma in Occupational Safety and Health. The Department of Medical Imaging offers the following courses: Diploma in Medical Imaging Radiography, Bachelor of Medical Imaging Honors, Bachelor of Medical Imaging Honors on an ODL platform. So, why to join the health sciences? There are many reasons, but these are the few. iJob demand. So it's going to essentially the essential services, no boring work routine. So it's exciting. And the remuneration is going to be lucrative. So it's a well-paid jobs offered, low risk of job redundancy, which is very important at this present scenario. Opportunity to work in variety of settings. So a person who completes degree can work in different work settings. A career you can feel good about. So regarding the Master of Physiotherapy, we got a 1 year program full-time and 2 year program which is offered as a part-time. So this is the entire entry requirement for bachelor's degree. So if you have any further questions or queries regarding the entry requirements, please visit our website, the World Wide Web, mahsa.edu.my. Please do visit us if you have any further queries. So we have got Bachelor of Physiotherapy, Bachelor of Physiotherapy Honors, Bachelor of Environmental Health and Safety. So please go through the entry requirements. If you have any further queries, please visit our website. So this is the diploma courses that we offer: Diploma in Physiotherapy, Diploma in Environmental Health, Diploma in Medical Imaging. So please go through the entry requirements. As I said earlier, if you have any further queries, please visit our website. So as we aspire at MAHSA University, and infinite excellence is what MAHSA aspires to provide to each of its graduates. So why to choose FOHS at MAHSA? We got experienced and dedicated international pool of academic staff, interactive teaching and emphasis on hands-on clinical skills, face-to-face on an online platform. We got LMS, wide list of hospital and institutions for clinical and industrial placement, accredited by MQK and JPA with international recognition. We got various study modes to suit each one of study requirements. So we got cross-teaching by experts. We offer scholarships at MAHSA for the deserving candidates. So we got collaborations and affiliations with reputed institutions all over the world. And we've got student mobility program where students can gain knowledge at various institutions of repute. So these are some of the student mobility programs that we have with various international universities. So please note the MAHSA Open Day. You can visit us and you can ask us in person about the courses that we offer. Thank you. Dear viewers, I feel that you've had, so the information that you're given regarding our FOHS and the degrees that we offer would enlighten you. As I said earlier, if you have any further queries, please visit us at our MAHSA website or visit us during the open day. So please feel free to contact us through MAHSA website or our faculty Facebook page to know more about our programs, or simply leave a comment and we'll get back to you. We assure you about that. Your questions concerning this webinar session can be listed in the chat box for discussion during the Q&A session. Dear viewers, please be remembered an e-certificate will be provided for this webinar, and to be eligible for this certificate, please fill in the survey form. The link to the survey will be provided at the end of this seminar and can be found in the comment section. So today's webinar is going to introduce us to the following. The COVID-19 pandemic has created unprecedented challenges, as we all know, globally. The COVID-19 pandemic has impacted every sphere of our lives. The impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on mental health has been profound, and it has been widely acknowledged and well documented by the scientific community. This webinar aims to introduce participants to the impact of COVID-19 on the mental health of children, adolescents, women, health workers, and entrepreneurs, as well as provide a guide to psychological sophistication and resilience building with emphasis on stress management and coping skills. It gives me immense pleasure to introduce today's expert speaker. She is my classmate, a longtime friend. Once again, it gives me immense pleasure in introducing Ms. Zeba. Ms. Zeba has completed a master's degree in occupational therapy in mental health from University of Mumbai, India. She holds a fellowship in research from University of Kansas, United States. And she has got a vast experience of 20 years in clinical teaching and research and has been associated with several national and international universities as an academic expert. She has presented scientific papers at several national and international conferences and recipient of prestigious international and national awards for her contribution towards education. She received the William Rush Dunton Education Excellence Award for 2022. Once again, it gives me immense pleasure to invite Ms. Deepa. The floor is all yours, Ms. Deepa.
Uh, uh, Good morning, Mr. Samuel. Thank you for this kind introduction that you've given. So respected delegates, the dean, and the eminent members of the MAHSA University. So, at the outset, I would like to wish you a very good morning to everyone present here. So, let me just start sharing my screen. As briefed by Mr. Samuel, I'm going to talk about COVID-19 pandemic and beyond, and the journey towards mental resilience. So, as we've all gathered here to listen, to get more inputs, to brainstorm, so I always feel that there are a lot of noble thoughts which will come to us from every side. So, the noble thought that we are going to have it make us more resilient. So, little brief introduction about the institute where I work. The institute is National Institute of Physical Medicine Rehabilitation. It's an autonomous institute under Kerala Social Justice Department, and it's an institute center of excellence. And the institute provides comprehensive rehabilitative care, and it's equipped with the state-of-the-art facilities. So, looking at some of the things that we have around the institute, we have a special and a transition school. We have a department of occupational therapy. We have a department of physical therapy, department of social work, nutrition and dietetics, medical services, clinical psychology, speech and language therapy, and developmental therapy. These are the therapies that is being offered here. And these are the few state-of-the-art facilities that you can find in our institute. We have a regional autism training center as a part of a project. Then we have excellent virtual reality unit. Then spinal injury rehabilitation unit, a sensory garden and a park. And we want to empower individuals with disabilities. So we have a vocational training program which is called NVOG. Then we have advanced neurophysiotherapy with instrumented gait analysis, a Nutri Garden, and we have an independent living apartment, the ADL apartment, and we have aquatic rehabilitation unit and an artability center. So with that introduction about the institute, so we've all gathered to discuss about more about mental health. So when we talk about mental health, since mental health is just not a destination, but a process. It's all the way in which we drive and not where exactly we are going. So this concept, this about mental health is something which is very important. If you could understand that, it would be easy to go through this journey of resilience. So, coming on to the mental health, this is a revised definition as given by WHO. So, it's a state of well being in which the individual realizes his or her own abilities, will be able to cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a contribution to his or her community. So, if you can see this definition itself, one is realizing our abilities. Secondly, it talks about the way a person can cope. And thirdly, where a person can be a productive member at home and in the community. So, these are the three hallmark features of mental health. And as WHO also says that there is no health without mental health. So, mental health is a very essential and important component that we need to focus on. So these are some of the facts about mental illness. So if you can look into the fact number one, the mental, neurological, and substance disorders make up to the 10% of the global burden of the disease and 30% of the non-fatal disease burden. So and if you can look into the leading cause for disability worldwide, it's the mental and the substance use disorders contribute a lot, and about 800,000 people commit suicide every year, and this is very alarming. War and disasters have a large impact on mental health and the psychosocial well-being of an individual. Then mental health disorders are important risk factors for other diseases as well as unintentional and intentional injuries. So then there is still a lot of stigma and discrimination against patients and families. So this stigma actually prevents people from seeking mental health care. But I would say stigma, which was back then in 1960s or 50s, from then on, that stigma has considerably reduced. We see more and more people actually seeking help from a mental health professional. So there is a lot of human rights violation of people with mental and psychosocial disability, and this is actually reported in many countries worldwide. So if you can look into the globally, there is a huge inequity in the distribution of skilled human resources for mental health. If we can see if someone has to cater to the needs of a person with physical problems, definitely you have a lot of health professionals. But if we consider the fact for a mental health professions as such, the number is much lesser. And there are certain barriers for the mental health services for to be available. One is the absence of mental health from the public health agenda, and there are a lot of implications of funding as well. So there is a discrepancy in the organization of the mental health services and the lack of integration with the primary care. Then, as I said earlier, there is inadequate human resources for mental health and lack of public mental health leadership. So these serve to be the barriers for mental health services to be available for people. So then the financial resources, of course, is essential to drive the mental health. So they are relatively modest. So if we can, from the journey from 2020, when we can actually see, I think these are the words which are constantly we've been hearing or which we've been seeing, like pandemic, COVID, Corona, lockdown, Delta, Omicron, new normal. I think every day, even till this date, we've been hearing this often. So as we've been hearing this continuously throughout, so what actually happens? So there is a feeling of uncertainty that is dwells in within each one of us. And this uncertainty that dwells within us actually pushes us into some kind of impending doom or a fear we have, fear within all of us. What is going to happen? Will I become a victim to this? Will my family member have or will succumb to COVID? What will happen? Will there be a major devastation? These are a lot of questions which come. So there's extreme levels of anxiety. So all of us at some point of time, everybody has gone through this phase of feeling extremely anxious, not knowing what to do because when COVID was there and it was announced as a pandemic and the complete lockdown, I'm sure everything came to a standstill and people were clueless of how to go about what is the direction of what to do. This just stage, I think the anxiety at a peak level, and then the mortality rates increased with COVID-19, again the anxiety actually increased further. So thankfully now the anxiety levels of people has come down because the incidence of COVID-19 and corona is slowly settling down. So these are the three main things which goes through a person. So it has got this impact, this uncertainty, the fear and the anxiety is actually affects the behavior of a person, and definitely the person goes through a lot of emotional turmoil. So the person is completely helpless. Whom should I go to? Where should I go to? What kind of help should I ask for? So these are a lot of things the person feels extremely helpless, and there's a sense of hopelessness within the person. I don't think it will work out. So that's completely there's a sense of hopelessness. So when this behavioral changes and emotional turmoil that a person goes through, what happens? It leads to a lot of distress within a person. So if you can see here, as I said earlier, there is increased anxiety and uncertainty, feelings of loneliness or sadness, feelings of helplessness and completely frustration. Our frustration tolerance becomes very low. We easily get irritated, we get angry, we've been shouting at people. So definitely there are a lot of changes in the eating or a sleeping pattern of the individual, and there are changes in the substance use, and a lot of information we've been getting from media, from the colleagues, from our health workers, so much of information that we've been receiving constant information, and that update of information. So too much of these information when we're constantly listening to is also cause a kind of a burnout. Like media always talks about COVID-19, Corona, what need to be done. And definitely there has been an exacerbation of existing mental health concerns. You hear out of all these things which I have listed here, each of us can actually relate like what have you noticed? At some point we would have noticed any one of these things. If I would say from my side, I think I've noticed changes in my sleeping pattern because being a health worker, I had to be attending to the people with COVID-19, addressing the psychological issues constantly, day in and day out, and night time. So definitely my sleeping pattern. For you, maybe a different things, maybe increased anxiety and uncertainty would be there. So with that distress which all of us have gone through, so definitely it's just not the adults. Children underwent a lot of difficulties during this phase. So one, the major impact on children was in the academic. So because the schools were closed, complete lockdown, the initial phases, I think the children were just at home, not being able to do anything. So that significantly it affected their scholastic and their academic performance. So slowly after that only classes, everything was started taking in an online platform. So then peer relationships. So because when a person goes to school, they interact with their friend, with the other peers, with their seniors, with the teachers. So the interaction is greatly affected. So relationship was greatly affected, and most importantly I would say for a relationship to develop the social skills, the emotional regulation, how to handle one's own emotions, I think all these are usually possible through play serves an excellent medium. So play was actually affected majorly here because children are not allowed to go like outdoor play, they don't interact with other children, they're not. So because of that, there is a significant decline in the play activity, and of course the sleep pattern of a person because they don't have a scheduled timing. Like when there was a school, they know they used to get up at this time, they need to do this work at this time. So children tend to sleep for a longer time. Or the whole night they were sitting on the mobile phone or on the television. So complete the sleep pattern completely went haywire. So because of this complete alteration, the routine was there. There was no fixed eating time, there was no fixed leisure time. So there was imbalanced activity configuration where we look into the play, their self-care, the leisure, and the study. So most important in the schools, for a lot of the schools which are run by the government, usually they have this midday meal scheme or nutritional schemes are there. So when children were going to schools, they were actually being provided with the food and adequate nutrition was ensured. But when schools were stopped, that was actually not there for them. They were deprived of that. So parents were trying, as parents would try to make difficult to make both ends meet, it was very difficult. That itself was causing a lot of distress for children as well as for the family members. So, if you can look into this, like the expected event impacts arising from COVID-19, so the on mental health, so it can be either the direct impact or it can be the indirect impact. So, and the effect impact could be either short term or medium to long term. So, if you look into the direct impact here, there is the event is basically the threat from the COVID-19. So threat could be a perceived threat or it can as an actual threat. So there are a lot of anxiety and exacerbation of existing psychotic symptoms if the person already had a mental illness. So medium to long in term, because of the post ICU syndrome, it caused a lot of anxiety, depression, and post traumatic stress disorders. So, and a lot of people went through a lot of bereavement. So, because of the bereavement, the effect was more of depression. And if you could look, a lot of frontline staff were majorly affected. That was the major psychological impact. And there was this post-traumatic stress disorders. So, indirect, definitely the lockdown and isolation caused more array of symptoms of anxiety, depression, increase in alcohol use, and educational impact. So medium to long term impact, definitely, like the economy suffered a lot where it led to unemployment, job insecurity. There was reduction in the income. Then there was increased debt, housing loss, and loss of socioeconomic status. And the potential impact and the effect definitely was significant increase in the anxiety levels, lots of depression, suicide, and increase in alcohol use and other addictions. So, because of the fear of potential economic impact, that caused a lot of anxiety, and medium to long term effect was it affected personal relationships. And if you can see the lot of increase in the domestic violence during the time of lockdown, and post traumatic stress disorders was quite in the forefront. So, with this idea which we have about the direct and the indirect mental health, let's move towards what are the different ways in which we can promote positive mental health. Yes, first it's a telecounseling. It can be done either to individual or a family counseling. Of course, supportive psychotherapy and the resilience building. I'll be talking in depth about resilience building, how to do, and stress management in terms of training and coping skills, and having alternate and adaptive ways of thinking and relaxation techniques. So we've been talking about the whole core theme of today is we're going to talk about resilience. So what exactly is resilience? So resilience is a personal or a team, if you're working at a team's capacity, recovery, adjustability, or elasticity. So it's an ability to recover from or adjust easily to adversities or change. So definitely there has been a change, a lot of adversities that happened, COVID-19 pandemic. How well are we able to recover from that? And how are we going to act and adapt in the face of adversity and when there are a lot of constraints which is there? This exactly is what resilience is. So there are different domains of resilience. If you can look here, the resilience is the physical resilience, where we talk about the physical flexibility, the endurance, and the strength. The emotional resilience in terms of emotional flexibility, the positive outlook to life, and the self regulation. How well a person is going to regulate his or her emotions. Spiritual is the spiritual flexibility. All of us have certain values, and how well are we going to adhere to the values? How well are we going to be committed to the values? And the most important is the tolerance of the others. And if you look at the mental resilience, is the mental flexibility, the attention span, and the ability to be focused and to focus on something. So these are the four important domains of resilience. So having discussed about these domains of resilience, let's now look into certain things about this called the seven C's of resilience. It's more applicable to children, but I find it really well when I use resilience building, I apply it for adolescents and adults as well, and really helps. The first one is instilling confidence. So everybody needs to be confident about oneself. Whatever we are doing, we have to do it with utmost confidence and competence. Like how competent are we? being having competence in doing this. Connection is the key to resilience. Being connected is, or forming connections, that is very very important. Character, contribution, how well am I going to contribute as an individual, either to the family or to the society, the community. So whichever place we are in, how well we are going to contribute, either in our system or maybe our subsystem and the supra system, which was more of a society. And coping, how well are we going to cope with the particular situations. Coping and controlling, do we have the adequate emotional control and the flow to manage and handle the distressing situations. So these are the 7 C's of resilience. And resilience is often definitely is action oriented. We focus on action. What is that we are going to do? So if we can show is action oriented, if we can look into the emotional regulation for person, or we are going to organize a behavioral pattern, or we are going to focus on building connectedness, as I said, definitely if you say all these things are there, one part of the puzzle is missing there, just put in together, definitely that really helps in building resilience. I'm going to look at resilience in COVID pandemic from a completely over a different aspect. So this is the resilience scale in COVID pandemic. If you can see here, this picture here, we have the negative outcomes on one side and the positive outcomes on it. It's like a seesaw. You can see there, and in the center you see the fulcrum. So in the negative outcome, most could be the job loss, or we have a loved one with COVID-19 and schools were closed and there was physical distancing. These are viewed as a negative outcome. Whereas in the other end, you see high quality childcare. There were some unemployment benefits which were provided and probably stable housing. If family members were together and intact, these are looked as a positive outcomes. So, I mean, if you go in detail looking at this scale, so we could see the point at which there was a scale was balancing the fulcrum. So if you move the fulcrum, it can be made it harder or easier to tip the resilience scale to the positive. So all of us, we have a different spot in the fulcrum. So that's the reason like why each of us are very different, and how we balance or how we counterbalance hardships in life. All of us do not handle hardships or distressing situation in an equal manner. So this plays a very important role because our fulcrum is at a different spot. But one good thing, though, having said that, that fulcrum is at a different spot, the good news is that this fulcrum can be moved. So we can develop a toolkit of skills that we can use to adapt, and definitely we can find solutions. So with that, for using this resilience scale to beat COVID-19, so let's now look at it. What can we do to build up and strengthen resilience at the moment? And what can we plan ahead for future times of crisis? So one of the ways in which we can do is, as we looked at the previous thing, is unloading the negative side. So we need to identify the sources of stress. Yes, these are actually the sources of stress. So if we can unload the source negative side, we will be able to move towards the positive side. So the fulcrum would be balanced a little more. So that is one aspect. But how exactly are we going to do that? So the lot of we can lighten the load of the negative side of resilience scale by reducing the sources of stress for families and for the staff and the faculty members. So one of the things is like if we can help families to meet the basic needs of food, shelter. There were a lot of people who had difficulty with they didn't get a diaper for change for children. But if we can explore or expand the healthcare, the child care, or maybe expand the way they can use the internet, connecting them with the programs that can actually help, and that has actually helped. And also we can guide adults who are out of work through applying for financial assistance. That actually really helps them. It does actually help them. And for definitely for children, we look for a lot of kids activity kits that can be provided. For example, coloring books, crayons, markers, or some puzzles that can be. So definitely when parents are there with children at home, they may not continuously take care of the children. So children will be engaged in these things. So, and also having a lot of encouraging for parents and to practice self-care. Maybe though I've written here going for a walk, definitely we cannot go for a walk outside. Maybe walk in the room, or if they can have a balcony, just take a walk there, and taking plenty of rest is very, very important. And a lot of employment assistance programs, and I'm sure all the organizations are providing mental health counseling. So if we can make use of it, utilize it more productively, I think that definitely helps to reduce the stress. So second one is like load up the positive side. So by what do we mean by load up the positive side? We are going to have a lot of supporting, responsive relationships. So basically, flexible parental leaves can be given, and this has been followed in few, but not in all ways. Like if the two parents are working, so one parent can stay at home, the other parent can actually take leave, and virtual home visits. This is something which I have actually done because people are deprived of meeting people, making connections, talking to them. So it's basically like a video call, have a tour around their home visit as though they are entering into their home situation. That actually helped people so that they were not missing too much of their loved ones, whom usually they used to regularly visit. And a lot of community services which can be provided at an online platform, and the unemployment benefits. So if you can see here, the fulcrum is balance. So balance actually is maintained here. So if we can see though, so basically we can have a lot of responsive relationships. They can have a committed relationship with a supportive parent, caregiver, and actually of adults. All of us need supportive relationships. So when we are trying to, people are difficult in accessing or in person, what really helps is a phone call or a video chat. So, but then continuous phone calls or video chats can actually be frustrating. But then when we look into it, the positive, the benefits of it is much higher than the demerits that it has got. So we are also having providing a opportunity for parents to engage in a responsive relationship. So with a trusted adult at the time of the physical isolation. So most importantly is to maintain and encourage connections with the family and friends. So that really is very essential for emotional well-being and manage the stress of living through this challenging time through email or write letters. So, so we've seen the reducing the social stress from addressing the negative side and how we can improve the positive side in scale. And now definitely yes, moving the fulcrum. So, but how can we move the fulcrum or how can we establish the balance? That can be done by strengthening the core skills. So, when we mean by strengthening the core skills, the first and foremost thing we need to know ourselves. What is our capacity? What is that we can do now, day to day, or to the entire day, or if it is an ongoing, overall my capacity. So, we need to be aware of ourselves. That is the first step. Secondly, what lens are we using? So each of us have different ways of looking at things, of perceiving things, and the emotional maturity and the emotional regulation actually differs. Our emotional lens can actually affect how we interpret and receive information. So sometimes, very often, all of us we tend to be reactive instead of resilient. So if we are unaware of how it is impacting us, so we need to be aware of that, and we need to look at it from an emotional lens that is going to be more protective. So definitely we need to look into what could be the challenges that can affect us to become more resilient. So what is that frustrates us? What sets you off or what derails you? So we can actually make a list of things then how you can avoid those or be prepared when you bump into them. So we need to have an action plan there. Yeah, this particular situation, this particular thing happens. This is the way I'm going to deal with it. So having an action plan, I usually encourage people to have a diary in which they can write it and be more prepared for uncertainty. So lots of things we can actually anticipate and how well we can deal with them. So, and for all the audiences, this is a little bit of exercise. If you have a book, you can actually write it down. So type in or write down. It's just for your own learning. So it's basically you can exactly write how we are feeling right now, this moment. All of you can write it down. And other thing which probably little bit of task that you can do is, what is that thing that you could do to restore or maintain your capacity, right? So these two things, I just want all of us to write this down and do this exercise. That actually really help us to for self realization and also plan. And we need to for future, yes, how are we going to go about doing this? So these two things, I want all the delegates who are attending, the students are there, so if you could just do that. For this is for your own learning. Or when we what's other things we can talk about being more resilient is, we can send or sign up for the text reminders of important assignments. So we can have usually go grocery list apps, menu planners, and daily schedules we can have, so that the family members can actually see that, because usually some decisions will be taken together as a family. So when one of the family members is down with COVID-19, the family member will be isolated. So we need to include the family member. So this actually helps them to be included, to be part of these decision making, and they also don't feel so much of difficulty with having been isolated. So we can have a step-by-step checklist for accessing the relief funds and filling out important applications. So that actually really helps people to become more resilient. So one thing which actually, when a lot of people are, because of COVID-19, they were on quarantine. So what actually I did was helping them to improve their psychological status. So maybe we plan to distribute books for them, where they could read books, or during some activities they can be doing. And I did a lot of group therapy with them. So with these people who are on quarantine, because if they're in quarantine, they feel that nobody actually talks to them, nobody comes to visit them, definitely. So they go through lot of the depression was very high in people who are actually on quarantine. So that is, these actually methods actually help them to at least reduce the levels of distress. So when we talk about resilient building, often comes with, like, all of us have expectations, but how well are we going to manage these expectations? So with expectations comes disappointment. There's a lot of friction and frustration are found in the expectations gap, because very often we feel that whatever we expect, it has to happen. So because of that, there are a lot of disappointments come. So we need to now look into what are our desires and what are our expectations. So if you can categorize these two, that really helps us. So when we, but then when having seen the expectations gap that exists, we need to have a backup plan. So what are the backup plan? So are we having people on standby? So if you have a priority list, you need to, yes, probably this priority list needs to be reworked. So let me check on that. So you can rework the priority list, and we can use a lot of power phrases to manage, because I often use a lot of power phrases and motivational a theme, quotes, because that really helps me personally, and this power phrase actually helps. So one of the power phrases is like, frantic is not my framework, it's boundary season, I made it through everything to this. So these power phrases that each of us can have, I think that will help us become more and more resilient. So when there is an adversity, and if this adversity is being shared, it promotes a lot of bonding, and it would create solidarity, and it would facilitate cooperation and fosters connection. Ultimately, it's the connectedness that becomes very, very essential. So we can have a cadence for ourselves. So what could we learn from this? So we can have a flow of thought which is there, write it down in a diary, and that also helps us a great deal. And most importantly, the reframing or changing the mindset. So first and foremost, when there is a challenge or a disappointment, we need to acknowledge it. Yes, accepting the fact, yes, this is a challenge, yes, I am disappointed, this is happening to me. So very often people go through this phase of denial. They don't really want to accept that, yes, I am going through this. So we need to deal with the denials, knowing we need to be aware that, yes, this is happening to me, and it's just not happening only to me, it is happening to others as well. So then we can ask, how else can this be viewed? Is there an alternative way to view this? So basically, we need to reframe our thought process. So we can provide a lot of opportunity for creativity. We can build new skills and practice, practice, practice. I often say practice. There's an old adage which says practice makes a man perfect. Yes, definitely. The more we practice, the more we conquer, more resilient actually we become. So, and definitely we need to develop a culture of safety. So, whatever ideas, whatever thoughts we have should be shared freely. So, that is just like we have this webinar here. Whatever my experiences are, the way I deal with building resilience, what it is, thought and idea have I'm sharing with all of you. So, like this, it has to be shared. So, when there is a lot of room for unhealthy criticism or a sarcasm or a gossip, that can lead to toxicities. Emotionally, we become toxic. So, it is always very important for us to keep these toxic elements away from us, and we need to deal with them more efficiently. And yes, we've seen a cloth we take when you wash a cloth, we like, have a lather, we rinse it and repeat the whole process. Same way for our thought and the way we deal with it, also we need to lather, rinse, repeat. So, whatever strategies we've employed, we may have to revisit them multiple times to get through one situation, revise as needed. We need to revise, and as and when possible, we need to continuously engage others in the process. It's just we feel sometimes you cannot handle alone. Yes, always seek help from the other person. Do not hesitate to seek help. That's very important. So lather, rinse, repeat. Lather, rinse, repeat. That is what the magic word I always use, and I practice as well. So that is something all of us can practice. And if you can see here, I'm sure all of you can see this, the emotions which is there, and it is just kept in the bottle. So if this emotions which is there within us, it is going to get piled up, piled up, piled up, and one day it is going to burst. So it is going to become non-productive for the person. They will go through a lot of distress. Time to time, we need to give way for these emotions to be let out. So the process of letting out these emotions is called catharsis. So if your anger, express your anger rather than suppressing that anger you have. If a person is depressed and the person wants to cry, yes, the person needs to cry. Allow the person to cry rather than saying don't cry, everything will be okay. Because we cannot always know what situation the person is. We always need to look at things from that person's shoes and from their perspective and deal with it. So all emotions, we need to let out the emotions rather than suppressing their emotions. So if we can look into the resilience, like we saw the different contexts, that is, we have a political, economic, institutional process and the changes. So this is the most vulnerable category. So all of us were vulnerable, still are vulnerable. So we are quite sensitive. We have a lot of exposures, a lot of impacts, a lot of hazards have taken place. So vulnerable. So when we have our adaptive capacity and we have a coping capacity. So this adaptive capacity could be diverse. It can be as an institutional level, and we have various resources which is there which guides us, and ultimately we become the productive members. So if in resilience, if we can see here, we can have a transformative, that is which there's so much of learning that has taken place because we have already experienced certain things. So definitely there is a learning and there is a change that has taken place. In adaptive, we talk about the flexibility, the emotional flexibility. How well are we going to adapt to the situations? And of course, reorganization. We need to rework, we need to revisit. So we need to reorganize it, and we need to give way for regeneration, recovery, absolutely achieve stability. So if we can see the process of adaptation goes through this phase of, we cope, we adjust, keep adjusting, and completely there is a stage of transformation here. So if we, or from what I have discussed so far, if we can look into resilience building, the most important would be the action to life. You focus on action. As I said, resilience is action oriented. So we need to focus on can do. Yes, I will be able to do. We need to be aware of our own emotions. Only when we are aware of our own emotions, we will be able to convey it effectively to the other persons or group of individuals. So, and this emotional awareness is an important key for good communications. Then, having a sense of control within self, because when we have the control within self, that will actually gauge our responses to the circumstances or an organizational ability. So that is very essential. Of course, in resilience, when we talk about having adequate social support is very crucial. Social support in terms of the network of friends or family members, and definitely we need, all of us need to have a sense of humor. Laughter is the best medicine. We need to be laughing and be merry. There are a lot of laughter clubs which there, and that really helps. So this can, we can sometimes laugh at life's frustrations, take it easy. And we need to have a belief in ourselves, belief in our skill, belief in the efficacy of skill, because that can lead us to have a better self-confidence and have very high self-esteem. So we need, resilience also means the ability to problem solve, and all of us need to have the willingness to be adaptable and flexibility. Flexibility has to be there. Ultimately, if we could put all things together, is having a sense of optimism, and we need to focus on the strengths rather than the weakness or what is not there. Focusing on strength is applicable to people who are actually normal individuals, and definitely I usually take a strengths-based approach when I deal with my clients who are having those children or adolescents or adults with special needs. So strengths-based approach actually helps a person to improve their motivation, and they become more resilient. So, looking back into the resilience building component, in the second thing we've learned about how to build competencies, what how essential is to make connections, and how it can help to improve our confidence. Ultimately, we are able to control ourselves better. So, this COVID-19 pandemic and is a journey to resilience building, I think we've all learned so many things. So, one, we need to replace our old thinking pattern to new thinking patterns. So replace certain things. We need to rethink. Is that the way I'm dealing with this is correct? So is there some other way in which I can do something? So definitely we need to rethink, reinvent, because a lot of strategies as we employed pre-COVID-19 may not be applicable now. So we need to look into, yes, I need to reinvent something. All of us need to rejuvenate ourselves, become refresh ourselves, refresh our thought process. It's just not refreshing or booting a computer system. Our thoughts, our emotions need to get refreshed and rejuvenated. Yes, rejuvenate yourself and be a very resourceful person, because when you're very resourceful, when you look into the resources that really helps. And of course, research. So we need to research what are the things that will exist. What is that? Like one particular strategy might help for a particular individual or a particular organization, but that might not be applicable to other things. We cannot generalize that. So that's when we need to research more. So this arts concept actually really helps in formulating and ultimately or replace, rethink, reinvent, rejuvenate, resourceful and research helps us to build our confidence, and ultimately it helps to build our resilience. We become more resilient. So, by building resilience, we become more empathetic. We are more sensitive to the needs of the other person, and all of us have to be enablers. We need to enable certain functions. We need to be enabling their motivation. We need to enable the outcomes for our other person and for ourselves. Ultimately, we are going to empower ourselves and empower others as well. So, empathetic, enabling, and empowerment. These three are the key. So, what is the way forward now? So, having talked about what is mental health, the importance of mental health, how mental health is affected us, what are the steps in resilience, how can we build resilience? Just simple thing about way forward is just one important one is to create awareness. Create awareness about the importance of mental health, and we need to be aware of the reality. Yes, this is the reality, and we need to accept the reality. And there are a lot of policies are there. The policies varies from one country to another country. So we need to be uh, aware of the policies that exist, and most importantly, let's go with the flow. Whatever it is that we take on, let's go with the flow. And we need to understand the needs of a person, study the situation in depth, and motivation. So if you are motivated and if you are able to build on work on our motivation, that will yield to resilience building. So with this, I think we are constantly, all of us are breaking, then we rebuild, we are growing, and we are always guessing as human beings. So with that thought in mind, I believe that the words may inspire, but only actions can create change. So today, let all of us be an influence of a change. Let us all be the change agent and work towards better resilience. So thank you, one and all.
Thank you, Ms. Deepa, for an insightful presentation. It was motivating, it was rejuvenating, and it was giving us ideas how to cope up during this pandemic situation. Once again, thank you very much for sharing your knowledge with us. Dear viewers, if you have any questions for our speaker, please leave a comment on the chat box. Okay, Ms. Deepa. So, could you kindly enlighten regarding group therapy? You talked about group therapy. So, could you kindly enlighten how group therapy is going to help us to cope up and to develop resilience, please?
When you talk about group therapy, once like a group therapy can be actually held uh, in person. Group therapy can actually be held in person, or it can be held online, because due to when the COVID pandemic was there, what I did was I conducted group therapy online in a virtual platform. So in a group therapy, we need to first identify what is that we want to focus on. Suppose am I going to focus on improving the self-esteem? If that is the core theme of that, I select individuals who have difficulties or very low self-esteem and accordingly deal with it. Or every group therapy sessions usually I structure my sessions. Like I have a warm up, I have a performance, and I have a wind down. So each sessions usually last about 30 to 40 minutes, and the series of sessions, maybe 7 sessions are conducted, and the timing, everything is being discussed with the members according to their convenience, and usually have it three times a week, or maybe probably a 12 or a 10 sessions. That has been discussed with the members. So identifying the theme, and also the goals and objectives for each sessions need to be there. So I always set the objectives for each sessions. I give lot of homework assignments for them to practice. They come back in the next session when discuss about the homework. And I have a lot of techniques that I employ as a role play and the role reversal, where they actually enact the situations that they are going through or what methods they employed and accordingly deal with it. So the various group therapies are there. For example, for I work on anxiety management or anger management, or helping a person to be more assertive. So assertiveness training I work on, or a group therapy just to focus on improving the motivation of a person. So that is something. In person is actually really helps a person, because when they experience having been seated next to a person, but COVID-19 pandemic, because of physical distancing, that was not possible. So I did it on an online thing, but doing it on online was quite challenging actually, because the group dynamics is not as same as having it in in person or in a physical thing. So that is what I would talk about group therapy.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Deepa, for your insightful thoughts on group therapy. So, I have one more question for you, please. So, could you please give us insight regarding the strategies that as accommodations, because we are all teaching, okay? We are all in teaching. We are dealing with students. Each one of us, let it be an academic staff or a student, everyone is feeling one or other form of anxiety, pressure, whatever it might be, as you have discussed in this webinar. So, what could be the strategies? Okay, as an accommodation, what are the strategies that I can follow while developing resilience among students? key
Okay,
strategies
that's
of
a
resilience that could be instilled or explained to a student.
okay. Thank you for that question. That is a wonderful question. So one thing I like looking at the resilience for the students is, so what I usually do is though there is an academic requirement is there for the students as part of it's part of the curriculum itself. I've included a lot of things as part of certain tasks that will help to improve or make up the personality of a person. You know, as part of the curriculum where we can actually structure it and include it. That is one thing. And secondly, what I would do in resilience building for the students is identifying the needs of the individual students. What are their strengths and what are their weaknesses? That is very important as academicians. We need to know the strengths and the weaknesses of individual students and focus more on their strengths, because when I focus more on their strengths, identify their strengths, acknowledge it, and reinforce it. Very often, we are quite stingy in appreciating another person. So I feel it's more important to be more generous in appreciating or acknowledging the other person. Someone has said you have done, yes, that's very good. So that is really very nice, because reinforcing that, it's very very important. That helps them, they become more motivated. So if they don't have intrinsically, they are not motivated, they will be used able to use as external cues as motivating thing. And I often have a lot of, as I said, group therapy. I do group therapy for my students as well, where they can get into certain things, work on improving their assertive skills, or how well they can be motivated, or I give some leadership roles for students some task that they need to work on something, they need to present it. So they become much more confident in doing that, giving the key to them and to unlock the road towards resilience. That actually really helps them in identifying the path. Let them come with what all possible solutions they have. Then we kind of have a discussion. And of course, I do arrange a lot of webinars for the students if they could come, where an expert can address and deal with this. These are some of the things which I train my students in order to improve their resilience.
Thank you, Ms. Deepa, for enlightening us about the strategies regarding developing resilience among us and also among the student population. Once again, thanks for that. So, I have one question from the wonderful audience, from one of the wonderful audience. So, is resilience is going to be a personal skill or it can be inherited? So,
Okay, that's
this question, this is from a student perspective. So, if a student is going to ask us whether this resilience, whether it's a personal skill as such, or it could be inherited. Your perspective on this, please.
okay. Well, I would say resilience, if you could see from a student perspective, I think it's definitely both. I would look at it as a personal skill and it can be inherited. So a person can acquire resilience in the due course. If they can teach them adequate strategies, then they can deal with it. Definitely, resilience is not something which cannot be acquired or someone cannot. Definitely, it's a personal skill. Because a person here mentioned skill. If someone has to be skilled in something, we need to go through certain process. And then in this due course of process, as I mentioned in my talk, is about practice, practice, practice. So the practice and the experience makes a person more resilient. So hope I've answered that question from the student.
Okay. Thank you very much. So, for your wonderful insight, whether resilience is inherited or it could be acquired. Okay. So, with that, we are coming into the conclusion of today's session. To our dear speaker, once again, we thank you for joining us and for the knowledge that you have shared with us. So, once again, we thank you for sharing your knowledge with us. So, to our team and attentive viewers, thank you for joining our webinar. We look forward to your comments and participation in the future events hosted by MAHSA University. For further queries, please contact us through MAHSA website or please visit our social media. Have a pleasant day. Once again, thank you, every one of you.
Thank you. Thank you, lovely audience. And I thank the host for having invited me to render the talk. Thank you. Have a
Once again, we
wonderful day,
thank
all of you.